Hello, so I'm going to read our next chapter. Whoa, I'm gonna hold it upside down again. So I just finished making some supper. I'll see you guys tomorrow at school. Which chapter did we leave off at here? I think we read chapter 5, yeah, called Ava, so then we'd be on 6. I'll let you know if it's a long one or not. It's called Lilacs. It's not too long. I also made some wood burning art today that I'll show you, and I'll show you Cloud as well at the end of the video. He's asleep right now. So it's called Lilacs. Summer went by quickly. Marussia got a job picking strawberries. When strawberry season was over, the same farmer hired her to work on his other crops. My days were taken up with lessons at Miss McIntosh's house and visits to the library with my Chilo. Miss Barry grinned whenever she saw us. She would let us look at the new arrivals and would point out books that she thought we might like. The routine of the summer seemed to settle my mind. The flashbacks and nightmares seemed to go away. On Saturday nights, if Ivan wasn't too tired, he, Marussia, and I would walk to the hall of Dundas Street. It was a rented building shared by all the Ukrainians in town, Catholics and Orthodox alike. Marussia especially loved it when we went out like this. For working on the farm, she wore a used pair of men's overalls, and she would change into a second-hand house dress when she got home. But for Saturday night, she wore her one nice blouse and skirt. Sometimes people at the hall would gather a band and there would be a dance. Other times people would sit at the tables and talk. Marussia would sit with a group who were writing letters to relief organizations trying to find lost loved ones. They would update each other on their progress and compare notes. I liked to go because there were other children who spoke Ukrainian. My Chilo would often be there. I was devastated to learn that none of the other Ukrainian children except for my Chilo would be attending Central School. There weren't as many of us, and they were spread all over the city. There were 2 sisters who had been born in Canada. Their Ukrainian was not good. They went to Grandview. A tall boy with glasses who spoke Ukrainian with a Polish accent was going to start at St. Basil's School. Early each Sunday morning, we would dress again in our good clothing and walk to the Ukrainian Catholic Church on Terrace Hill Street, which was 1 block closer than the hall. It was a small church, and there were so many people who attended that we had to get there early if we wanted to get a pew. The only inside place where I felt completely safe was sitting in that church. Few parishioners could sing on key, and that didn't bother me. I loved being enveloped by the hymns, and I loved the smell of the incense. It made me feel protected. Ivan worked on the house every day after work, and the last week in August, it was finished. Every morning, Marussia got picked up by a truck and taken to the farm in Beaufort. Her hands were swollen from the long hours of working in the fields, but it was the money we needed. I knew it was more than just her hands and the long hours that bothered her, though. Whenever the postman delivered mail, she looked through the envelopes with a hungry eye, but it never seemed to bring what she was waiting for. I asked her once about it, and her eyes filled with tears. "I cannot talk about it now," was all she told me. I think she was hoping to get news from the Red Cross about a relative. At the hall, whenever someone got one of these letters, everyone gathered around to hear it out loud. Sometimes the news was bad, sometimes it was good, and we all hooted for joy. Marussia had once studied to be a pharmacist, but as a slave laborer during the war, she worked in a fancy factory. Later on, she was forced to work as a cook at the German farm where we met. How awful it was for her to have to do hard labor again, even though she was supposed to be free. I would see a troubled look come over her face from time to time. Whenever I asked her what was wrong, she would paste on a smile and say, "Nothing, Nadia, I was just thinking." As often as we could, the 3 of us would sit down together on the cinder blocks in the backyard and pore over the books from the library and from Miss McIntosh. Marussia's dream was to learn English well enough to get a job in a store or maybe even a pharmacy. Ivan's spoken English was good, but he had no way of learning how to write it. I think he was looking forward to me starting school because then I could teach him everything I learned. The week before school was to start, Ivan greeted me at the door when I came in from Miss McIntosh's. He had a grin on his face. "The day has come to choose the color of your room." No. I had become so used to sleeping in the living room on a cold and rainy nights and outside when the weather was hot. "I don't need a bedroom," I said. "Why don't I just sleep in the living room anyways?" Ivan looked at me with one eyebrow raised. "Then you could use that upstairs room for storage." He shook his head. "Nadia, you need your own room." I said nothing. Ivan caught my hand in his and led me out the door. "In time, you'll like having a bedroom again." The paint store was on Colborne Street. 2 big blocks around the corner from the library. Ivan held the door open with one hand and made a big sweeping motion with the other, and I stepped in. The wet paint smell tugged at the edges of my memory, but thankfully no images came. Shiny metal cans were stacked against the wall and the aisles. I expected to see different colors, but the cans were mostly covered with white labels. On a stand beside the cashier's counter was a book of colored chips. Ivan led me to it. He flipped it open to a random page and revealed the shades of yellow and gold. He looked at me expectantly, but I shook my head. Yellow meant sunshine, and I loved sunshine, but yellow made me sad. Here's a flashback. I'm in that long car, and it was just me and Valta and the chauffeur. We were taken to a cluster of buildings surrounded by barbed wire. The sign of the entrance says, "Work shall set you free." The gates open and the chauffeur drives in. I feel sick. Valta grabs my hand and pulls me out of the car, and he gets out. He leads me past a snaking line of hunger-eyed women and children. Some wear heavy clothing and others dressed for summer. They all had one thing in common, a yellow hand-stitched star. A girl my age in a yellow dress that was once beautiful. Maybe her mother thought a yellow star wouldn't show on her yellow dress. As we pass, the girl looks me in the eye. It's just 2 pages left. Don't stare at them, says Valta, pulling me by the hand. We step into the storage area beyond the lineup. Crates and boxes brimmed with fancy clothing, fur coats, blue satin slippers, a tiara, even what looks like a new wedding gown. A well-fed man sitting behind a desk doesn't get up when we enter, but he nods as if he's expecting us. My heart pounds with fear. Is Valta angry with me? Is he leaving me here? I have no yellow star. The man grins at me and looks me up and down. His teeth are yellow, and his uniform collar is so tight that his neck bulges. You must be Gretchen, he says. I'm too frightened to speak. You'll need better clothes than that, he says, looking at my blue tunic and white blouse. He turns to Valta. I will find her something good. We walk back out, the women and children with the yellow stars. I can feel more than one pair of eyes like heat on my back. What about this one, says Ivan. Gretchen. I blink once. Gretchen Himmel. G.H. My name was Gretchen Himmel. So now the flashback is over. I blink again. I was back in the paint store with Ivan. I looked down at the color he was pointing to, a blue butter yellow. A pale buttery yellow. No, I said, yellow meant death. I could never sleep in a yellow room. I flipped the page so quickly that it nearly tore it. Careful, said Ivan, smoothing down the crease of the glossy paper. My mind was still swirling between past and present. I clutched onto the side of the counter so I wouldn't fall. Ivan looked at me strangely. What's wrong, Nadia? I took a deep breath and tried to clear my thoughts. I'm fine, I said. I wanted to get this over with. Let's look at some of the other colors. Next were pink and reds, everything from the palest blush of that long ago pink brocade dress to the violent red of blood. No. The next page showed blues. My hand reached out. It's on its own accord and touched a blue mauve. A wisp of scent tickled the edge of my brain. Lilac bushes in a much-loved garden. You'd like your room to be that color? Ivan asked, and I surprised myself. Yes, I did want that color. Lilac would make me feel safe. I wasn't happy about the thought of being closed up in a small room all night, but the color would be soothing, and maybe I could convince Ivan to leave the door off. He handed a lilac paint chip to the clerk and ordered 1 can. We walked home carrying the can between us. Ivan and I painted the room together. It didn't take long. It was a small room after all, but I still slept in the living room for the next few days to give the walls a chance to dry. I was a bundle of nerves that first night in my own bedroom, but Ivan had found a second-hand lamp for me, and he set it on the wooden crate that was my nightstand. If you get scared, turn on the light, he whispered. He sat at the edge of my mattress and sang a song until I fell asleep. I dreamed of lilac bushes on a sunny, windy day. Okay, that's the end of that chapter. The next one is called School. Yay, she's going to school. All right, I will grab my cat and my art that I did today to show you. Okay, so it took me about, I don't know, maybe an hour or a little bit less to make this wood burning art. It's a hot tool. It gets really, really hot, and then you can burn into the wood. I don't think this is something we'll be making in our art class. I just don't think it's safe enough for our age group, and I only have one. But I'll grab my cat. I don't think he wants to be grabbed. He looks pretty cozy here. Oh, there's Cloudy. This is his spot where he looks out the window and he makes sure that the other cat is not coming because they are not friends. They're very territorial. He likes to be the only cat around here.